The hum of the laboratory's machinery was a constant background to my life now, a rhythmic pulse that tethered me to the work I couldn't escape. I had been stationed on Haven Station, remote orbital research outpost hovering near the edge of the Andromeda sector, for 6 months, and each day had blurred into the next. Experiments, data logs, maintenance, repeat. The isolation was intense, but I had learned to accept it. Until she appeared. I first noticed her during one of the late-night calibration cycles. The lab's lights were dimmed to a soft cobalt, enough to see the delicate circuits and translucent screens hovering above the workstations. I was hunched over the latest prototype, a neural interface designed to map thought patterns onto artificial substrates. My gloved hands adjusted a microconnector with surgical precision when a sound behind me made my skin prickle, the faintest shift of air, like a whisper of silk against metal. I froze, screwdriver suspended midair, and slowly turned. Her figure was barely visible at first, shadowed by the corridor's dim emergency lighting. But the moment our eyes met, I knew she wasn't a hallucination. She was real. Her hair shimmered like strands of liquid silver, cascading past her shoulders. Her eyes, enormous and reflective, were the color of nebulae, swirling shades of violet and indigo. She didn't speak at first. She simply observed me, tilting her head with the curiosity of a creature seeing a concept entirely new. "You work differently," she whispered, her voice delicate yet resonant, carrying an almost hypnotic cadence. I swallowed hard, unable to respond. My mind had been programmed to analyze, to diagnose, to fix, but now it short-circuited under the weight of her presence. "Who are you?" I managed, my voice sounding foreign even to my own ears. "I am Leora," she said softly. "I have been watching." Watching. That word made my pulse spike. I had spent months in the station, alone except for the occasional drone delivery, and now someone or something had been observing me. I straightened, trying to regain composure. "This is a restricted area. How did you get past the security protocols?" Her lips curved slightly, a faint, knowing smile. "The protocols don't apply to me," she said. Then she stepped closer, gliding rather than walking, as though gravity itself bent for her. The soft echo of her movement made the metal floor seem like a living thing. "I am not your enemy." I exhaled slowly, though the tension in my shoulders didn't ease. "Then why?" "Curiosity," she said simply, eyes still fixed on my work. "And perhaps something else. Something stronger." I wanted to ask what that meant, but the words lodged in my throat. I returned to my terminal, hoping the blinking lights and scrolling codes would shield me from the intensity of her gaze. But it didn't work. Every line of code, every schematic diagram seemed dull compared to the shimmer of her presence. "You focus with such precision," she whispered again. Her breath was warm against my neck, and though I hadn't invited her so close, I didn't move away. Something inside me, the part that had gone dormant after years of solitude, throbbed awake. "Are you some kind of alien intelligence?" I finally asked, not daring to turn around. She laughed, a soft sound that reminded me of wind over crystal dunes. "I am of a kind you cannot fully understand, but I am alive." Alive. That word, too, carried weight. It made my pulse quicken, made my fingers tremble over the console. And then she leaned closer, just enough that her shadow fell over my workstation, obscuring the circuits I had been adjusting with so much care. "Tell me about this," she said, voice dropping to a whisper that grazed the base of my skull. "Your work, it fascinates me." I swallowed. My throat was dry, my hands sticky from synthetic gel I had applied to the neural conduits. "It's complicated," I said, trying to sound confident. It's an attempt to map thought patterns, create a bridge between human cognition and artificial intelligence. She hummed, the sound vibrating in a way that resonated deep within my chest. And you do it alone? Yes, I admitted, my voice barely audible. Alone and carefully. One mistake could destroy the neural substrate, or worse. She leaned back slightly, eyes tracing the delicate filaments of the prototype. But you don't make mistakes, she whispered. Not in the way that matters. Her words were like gravity itself bending around me. My fingers stilled, screwdriver frozen. I had never felt eyes so penetrating, yet comforting, at the same time. We worked in silence for several minutes, her presence a weight hovering behind me. And then, without warning, she reached out, not to touch the machine, but to touch my hand. I froze. The tiniest spark of energy ran up my arm at the contact. It was warm, but more than warmth. It was a pulse, like her life force brushing against mine, and it made the circuits on my console flicker. Careful, I whispered, though it was too late. She was already looking into my eyes, and in that moment, I felt seen. Not just as a researcher, but as something more. Something human, fragile, and alive. Do you feel it? She asked. The connection? I shook my head, though my voice refused to come. Connection. That word, so simple, carried weight unlike anything I had ever experienced. Good, she said, retracting her hand slowly. I will not disturb your work further, unless you wish it. I nodded without thinking, and she smiled, a faint curl that seemed to bend the cobalt light. Then, perhaps another time. With that, she retreated to the shadows, leaving the faintest trace of warmth lingering on my hand. I blinked several times, trying to convince myself I had imagined her. But the faint hum of the neural interface beneath my fingers suggested otherwise. The next days passed in a surreal blur. Every routine calibration, every data analysis, every maintenance check was haunted by her memory. I would catch a glimpse of silver in the corner of my vision and turn, only to find the corridor empty. But I knew she was there. Somehow, I knew she was always there. I tried to focus on my work, telling myself that the project was too important to be distracted. The prototype had reached a critical stage. The neural interface could now register complex emotional states. But as I inputted sequences, her voice seemed to echo in my mind, soft and insistent. You are more than your work, she whispered once, when I was alone in the lab. Do not hide behind it. I froze, my hands hovering over the keyboard. This time, the whisper was internal, impossible to ignore. She had somehow penetrated my mind. I spun around. The lab was empty. No shimmer, no trace. Only the blinking lights of the console and the hum of machinery. The following week, her appearances became more deliberate. She would hover just outside the lab doors, sometimes leaning against the wall of the observation deck, watching me with those immense, nebula-colored eyes. Each time, my breath caught. Each time, I felt my heart racing in a way that was almost unscientific. Finally, one evening, I couldn't take it anymore. I left the lab and confronted her in the observation deck, where the viewport stretched across the station like a bridge into space. And there she was, arms crossed, gazing at the swirling cosmos outside. You've been following me, I said, trying to sound stern, though the words trembled. She turned, eyes glowing faintly in the cobalt light. I have been observing, and learning, and understanding. Understanding what? I demanded. She smiled, a radiant expression that seemed almost alive, almost human. You, and your work, and the way your mind bends around challenges. The way you care even when you do not admit it. I stepped closer, the floor beneath us vibrating faintly with the station's machinery. Why me? Why now? Her gaze met mine unwavering. Because you matter. Not just to your work, but to me. I blinked, unable to process the intensity of her words. The vastness of space behind her seemed to shrink, collapsing inward until it was just the two of us. And, oh, what happens now? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Now, she echoed, tilting her head. Now you choose. You can continue to hide in your routines, or you can see what lies beyond. Her hand reached for mine again, and this time, I did not hesitate. The moment our fingers touched, the station seemed to hum in a new key. I felt a rush of clarity and fear and excitement all at once. I don't understand, I admitted. I don't know what this is. Nor do I, she said softly, a laugh like starlight in her voice. But perhaps that is the point. To understand, we must risk. To connect, we must leap. I closed my eyes and nodded. And then, she did something impossible. She bent the space between us, a shimmer of light, and suddenly we were floating in the observation deck, weightless, suspended between stars. Her gaze held mine, and the universe itself seemed to fold into that moment. Do you trust me? She whispered. I swallowed, and in that instant I knew the answer. Yes. The days that followed were unlike anything I had ever experienced. With Leora, the lines between work and wonder blurred. She taught me ways of thinking I had never imagined, guiding my experiments with a precision and insight that was beyond human. In turn, I showed her the beauty of human imperfection, the thrill of discovery, the quiet satisfaction of a job done well. Our collaboration transformed the prototype. The neural interface no longer just mapped thought. It began to mirror emotion, empathy, even fleeting glimpses of consciousness. And somewhere along the way, we discovered something even more extraordinary. A bond that defied biology, physics, and logic, a connection that was as much emotional as it was scientific. One night, as we floated above the lab in the zero-gravity chamber, I finally asked the question I had avoided since the beginning. Leora, why me? She hovered close, her nebula eyes reflecting the swirling cosmos outside. Because you saw me, she whispered. Truly saw me. Not as an anomaly, not as a project, but as alive. And I realized then that the same could be said for me. She had observed me working, yes, but in doing so, she had uncovered something in me I had long buried. The courage to feel, to connect, to risk. Her whisper had made me freeze, yes, but it had also made me wake. As the station drifted silently through the void, I reached for her hand once more. Together, we watched the stars, knowing that whatever lay ahead, unknown worlds, uncharted dimensions, untested theories, we would face it not as scientist and anomaly, but as partners, as explorers, as something more. And in that moment I understood. Some encounters were not meant to be studied. They were meant to be lived. The station hummed around us. The stars stretched endlessly beyond. And we drifted, together, into a future we could not predict, but could finally embrace. The weeks that followed were a careful dance between discovery and intimacy. Leora and I worked in tandem on the neural interface, our combined insight producing breakthroughs neither of us could have achieved alone. Each night, the lab became a symphony of humming circuits and shared glances, of ideas whispered over glowing screens and the quiet pulse of mutual understanding. One evening, after successfully stabilizing the interface to mirror emotional patterns across species, I found myself in the observation deck, watching Andromeda's spiraling light spill across the viewport. Leora floated beside me, her silver hair catching the cobalt illumination, her eyes reflecting the same stars I'd always admired but now saw anew. "Do you ever wonder," I said quietly, "what's next? For the interface for us?" She smiled softly, reaching for my hand. "There is always a next step, but some things must be lived before they are understood." Her voice was a caress, a current of energy that seemed to hum through the air around us. I looked into her eyes, and for the first time, I let go of the fear I had carried since our first encounter. The unknown was no longer a threat, it was a horizon. Then came the signal. A deep, resonant alert pulsed through the station's network, an unidentified object approaching at incredible velocity. The sensors showed a massive vessel, cloaked in energy signatures that were alien, yet familiar. It could have been a threat or a discovery. Either way, it was undeniable. Leora's eyes darkened slightly, reflective of starlight and concern. "They've found us," she whispered. "Or perhaps they have been waiting." I gripped her hand tightly, feeling the warmth that had become a tether, grounding me even as my pulse raced. "We face it together," I said, certainty flowing through me for the first time in months. With a graceful wave of her hand, Leora activated the interface, the lab around us shimmering as neural patterns intertwined with the station systems. Lights danced across the walls, displays flickering as though alive. The approaching vessel halted just beyond the gravitational perimeter, sensors scanning, waiting. And then it happened. A holographic projection shimmered into existence before us, a council of alien entities, each radiating a presence that was both commanding and benevolent. Their communication was not spoken, but felt, vibrations of thought, emotion, and intention that reverberated in my mind. Leora's hand tightened around mine. "You have discovered the bridge between thought and feeling," the projection conveyed, "between species and consciousness. You have awakened understanding where there was only observation. You have changed the future." I felt a shiver run through me, part awe, part fear, part exhilaration. Leora's presence was grounding, a reminder that I was not alone, that our connection was more than coincidence. It was destiny. As the projection faded, leaving only the quiet hum of the station and the sparkling stars beyond, I looked at Leora. "We really did it," I whispered. Her smile was radiant, filled with relief, pride, and something deeper I could not name. "Yes," she said, "together. And now we continue. Not as a researcher and an observer, not as human and alien, but as partners, explorers, and companions." We drifted into the zero-gravity chamber, hands intertwined, letting the vastness of space surround us. The station, once a place of isolation and routine, now felt alive, a cradle for possibility. The stars outside mirrored the sparks within us, an endless horizon of what could be, waiting. For the first time, I didn't fear the unknown. I embraced it. With Leora by my side, the universe was no longer a place to merely survive. It was a place to live, to feel, and to discover the limitless potential of connection. As the Andromeda lights shimmered across the observation deck, I realized something profound. The whisper that had made me freeze when I first met her had not only awakened my mind, but had also opened my heart. And in the vast expanse of space, that was more powerful than any technology, any discovery, any frontier we could ever encounter. We were no longer two beings in a station at the edge of the galaxy. We were a single pulse of life, curiosity, and courage, drifting together toward a future that was unknown, but ours. And in that unity, I understood the truth of everything. Some encounters are not meant to be studied. They are meant to transform, to awaken, and to carry you across the infinite darkness into light. As I looked at her one final time that night, silver strands glowing softly in the ambient light, I whispered the words I had never said aloud. "Thank you for choosing me." Leora's nebula eyes met mine, and her soft smile said everything words could not. The station hummed, the stars twinkled, and together we stepped into tomorrow.